The long-awaited plastic Emperor's Children miniatures are finally here, at last completing the 4 Chaos Space Marine armies of the Chaos Pantheon. As is expected, their first wave of miniatures have arrived in this Champions of Slaanesh box, which was sent to me early by Games Workshop. But if you've watched any of my videos, you already know where this is going. That's right, the Dornian Heresy. So join me as I use these new Emperor's Children miniatures to kitbash a Slaanesh corrupted White Scars kill team. While I had a few options, I would ultimately base my kill team on the Legionaries, meaning that I need to build at least 6 miniatures, and for these, I would use the new Tormentors/Infractors dual kit from the box set. Now, while the kits do feature a degree of Emperor's Children specific iconography, the designers have done a really great job at ensuring that these are entirely optional. So if, like me, you want to build your own non-Emperor's Children Slaanesh warband, then this kit is perfect. This essentially meant that I could assemble 6 of the torso/leg pieces without having to worry about scraping away or removing any Emperor's Children symbols. Once I had the 6 torsos, I could get to work on each of my kill team operatives. But before we continue working on this White Scars kill team, let's first hear from the sponsors of this video, boot.dev. Now, if you're anything like me, you prefer to learn a new skill by actually getting stuck into it, rather than relying solely on reading materials or video lessons. And if you're looking to learn how to code, then boot.dev is perfect for you. It's an online, self-paced learning platform where you will master back-end web development from start to finish using Python and Go, which you'll actually be writing yourself. But just to make sure you never get bored, boot.dev have designed their lessons to make you feel like you're playing an RPG game. As you work through the lessons, you'll rack up XP, climb levels, earn achievements, and complete quests, all while you unlock pages in your spellbook, which is full of links and notes that you can review at any time. When I was studying to be a developer, I really wish that something like boot.dev existed, because if you ever find yourself really stuck on something, help is always at hand. You can either connect to the boot.dev Discord community or get assistance from Boots the Bear Wizard. Boots is an AI trained on every lesson and will gently guide you in the right direction with a series of helpful questions, rather than just giving you the answer immediately. But if you're still scratching your head, you can always check out the full solution. And the best part, boot.dev has a 30-day no questions asked refund policy, so you can try it out for yourself. You can check out some of the early challenges in guest mode and even access their videos and text guides completely free. But if you're ready to dive in and get started on your programming journey, then click the link in the description box and use my code PeteTheWargamer for 25% off your first payment. That's 25% off your first month or your first year, depending on the subscription that you choose. So whether you're looking to try something new or take those first few steps towards a new career path, boot.dev has you covered. I kick things off with the Aspiring Champion and settled on this Cannabo-like mace that I'd sourced from the Age of Sigmar Symbaresh Twin Souls kit. I planned on attaching this to the left marine arm, which was carrying the whip, but first I needed to do a little clipping and trimming until the arm was just holding the handle. Similarly, the mace and pole were also removed from the Symbaresh hand. Attaching these parts to each other wouldn't be as simple as just gluing them together though. They needed a little more support, so I decided to drill a 1mm wide hole through the marine hand and into both halves of the mace. Into the hand, I superglued a short length of 1mm steel wire so it was just long enough for the wire to be still poking out of either side. Both the mace's handle and head were then glued onto the wire, leaving me with a weapon that had both a Slaaneshi and White Scar inspired aesthetic. For the right arm, I took inspiration from the new Flawless Blades unit and their exposed arms. While that kit isn't available at the time of making this video, the Khorne Berserker kit was, and after removing the obvious Khornate symbols, I was able to attach both this and the mace arm to the Obsessionist specific torso. However, because I had used an armorless right arm, the regular power armor shoulder pads wouldn't fit properly. Fortunately, the Symbaresh Twin Souls kit provided me with the perfect shoulder pad that not only sat neatly over the shoulder, but also slotted in nicely against the rondel that was placed against the champion's torso. For the left shoulder pad, I decided to bring in some of that White Scar specific iconography and attach one of the pads from the White Scars Primaris upgrade kit. When it came to picking the heads for my White Scars kill team, I made the decision early to not use the ones that came in the Tormentors/Infractors kit. I felt that these worked incredibly well for the body modification obsessed Emperor's Children, but didn't fit the aspects of the Slaanesh that I was looking to channel with these White Scars. Instead, I decided to use a leftover Corsaro Khan head from one of my past conversions, although one of the White Scar Primaris or Horus Heresy specific heads would have worked well here. With the arms and head in place, I finished off my aspiring champion with some Primaris upgrade extra details, as well as some pouches from the base kit, completing my first kill team member. My second kill team operative was the Balefire Acolyte, but for this particular model I took a lot of inspiration from the White Scars Stormcaller miniature from the Horus Heresy range, so much so that I decided to equip him with a staff. While the Grey Knight Force Stave would have worked well here, I really liked the dynamic pose of the spear from the Horus Heresy weapons kit. To give this more of a staff look though, I did have to clip away the spear's blade before drilling another 1mm hole into the top. Into this I then glued a short length of 1mm thick plastic rod. From here, I then drilled another 1mm hole into the underside of a goat skull taken from the Citadel's Skulls kit. After attaching this to the plastic rod, I was left with a pretty convincing staff. In order to attach the staff to the torso though, I did need to make little adjustments to both the arms and the torso. The Horus Heresy Marines are a little more narrow than the Slaaneshi Marines, so a little narrowing of the shoulders was required before I could assemble them. With the arms in place, I then attached one of the fabric-covered Emperor's Children shoulder pads to the right arm and another Primaris White Scars pad to the left. To continue with the Acolyte vibe, I then took one of the parchment strips found in the Sisters of Silence kit, trimmed down the back of the brooch a little, and then attached this to the chest. Finally, the shamanistic styling of the model was completed with a cloth pouch and knife sourced from the Kroot range, and a few Emperor's Children grenades. And for the head, I selected one of the bear heads from the Primaris White Scar upgrade kit, completing the mini. Next up was the Butcher. Normally, this model will be armed with a chain axe, but I was quite eager to use another weapon from the Horus Heresy weapons kit, the Eviscerator. Like with the spear, both the shoulders and the arms needed to be adjusted, but once they were a little narrower, the arms were glued into place. These were then followed up with another Emperor's Children right pad and a White Scars left pad. For the remaining details, I decided to take the Butcher name a little more literally. Slaanesh is the god of excess after all, and gluttony is just an excess of food. However, to keep that more tribal feel that I was taking this kill team in, I opted for some hunks of butchered meat sourced once again from the Kroot range. After gluing these to the waist, I then followed up with some Emperor's Children combat stim syringes, which I reimagined as sauce dispensers. For the head, instead of using a bare White Scars head, I instead opted to combine a Mark III helmet and the plume from a Sister of Silence. After clipping away the Mark III helmet spike and flattening out the top, the plume was also removed and flattened. Then, to avoid the plume getting in the way of the Eviscerator, I first glued the head to the torso and then attached the plume afterwards, leaving me with my completed Butcher. For my kill team's gunner, I kept things pretty simple and just assembled the plasma gun that came with the Tormentor's kit. Over the top of these arms, I attached the usual combo of Slaaneshi and White Scar shoulder pads before moving on to the accessories. In addition to some of the White Scar pouches, I also attached a holstered pistol that I'd taken from the Mark III kit. Speaking of the Mark III kit, I finished off my gunner by repeating those same steps to create myself another plumed Mark III helmet. The next operative to tackle was the Shrive Talon, and here I was able to make excellent use of the blades found inside the Infractors kit. Here I was able to source a pair of arms which were both equipped with dueling sabres, ideal for representing the flensing blades of the Shrive Talon. As per usual, the arms were topped with an Emperor's Children and White Scar shoulder pad, and I used my final White Scar bare head. Combined with the minis pose, these combined to create a very dynamic looking miniature, representing this operative's eagerness to get into battle. To finish off the model, and to help bring in that tribal appearance, some more Kroot knives were sourced along with a hooked skull, which I found in the Ogre Mournfang kit. I then followed these details with a White Scar symbol glued to the chest, and some more accessories from the Emperor's Children kit. My final operative to build was the Icon Bearer. My aim here was to give the bearer plenty of trophies in order to create an aspect of greed. The first of these was the skull-holding arm from the White Scar upgrade kit. The arm itself is quite clearly primarous, so I needed to first clip away the hand from the arm. I also needed to trim down the wrist of the Emperor's Children arm that I planned to attach the skull-carrying hand to. Then, after a few comparisons and adjustments, the hand and arm were glued to the torso. In terms of weapon loadout, I opted to give my icon bearer a bolter. Fortunately, the Tormentor's kit featured this perfect left-hand carrying bolter, which I then attached to the torso along with the usual shoulder pads. To give the model some ostentatiousness, I grabbed one of the Hob-Grot banners and clipped away a few of the tiles. These overlapped quite a bit, so I did need to be trimmed and reshaped in order to get some separate panels. Once I'd tidied up these overlaps, they were then glued to the belt and to the chest. One final top-knotted Mark III helmet was created, and I assembled the Slaanesh icon power pack as per the instructions. And with that, I was ready to start painting up the team. I kicked off the painting process with a black primer, specifically some of Vallejo's black surface primer, which was applied through my airbrush. This created a better surface in which to paint on, whilst also giving me some dark shadows that I would retain in the deeper recesses. I ultimately wanted my White Scar's armor to be, unsurprisingly, white, but rather than going straight to it, I first chose to begin the painting by mixing together some of Tamiya's XF82 Ocean Grey 2 along with some Tamiya thinner in my airbrush. This thin mixture was then sprayed from a high angle, so it only fell on the upper surfaces and left the downwards facing surfaces as their original black. This would help to create more of a natural blend from the black, whilst also retaining the appearance of shading in the areas you would expect to see them. For the white itself, I chose to use some of Tamiya's XF2 flat white. Again, this was mixed into some thinners and applied through my airbrush, which also helped to create a smooth consistency and finish. Like before, my application came from above. I mainly focused on the most prominent points, which resulted in the formation of a gradient from black to the grey and then to the white, helping to create more depth in the armor's tone. By using a thin mixture, I could make several passes, with each one subtly building up the intensity of the white on areas that I wanted to draw the most attention to, resulting in smoother transitions and overall texture. While the airbrushing had left me with a good starting point for the white armor, the details were not very pronounced. I remedied this by applying an edge highlight of White Star from the Tooth and Coats range. I applied these highlights across the entirety of the armor, including the trim. This helped those raised edges to stand out against the shadows I created in the previous steps. However, even though the airbrushing had resulted in shading towards the underside of the model, the upper surfaces were still looking a little flat. I opted to fix this one by mixing up some Oblivion Black wash with a little more of the Tamiya thinner that I'd used earlier. This reduced the strength of the wash whilst also allowing it to more easily flow into those recesses. Once dried, the wash had left me with a much more interesting looking white armor. With the armor complete, I could now turn my attention to the smaller details. The first of these were the ridged sections between the armor plates, the weaponry, hair, and the various pipes dotted across the model. These were all tackled with a base coat of Death Reaper. I added a little water to my paint to make it easier to apply, but paid close attention to not accidentally overspill onto the finished armor. The edges of all of these areas were then highlighted with some greyish blue of Shadow Blue, before I added a small dot of Frost Blue to only the most prominent points as an extreme highlight. Next up were the various sections of material stretched across the armor of the kill team. For these, I wanted to create the appearance of flayed skin used to adorn the armor, and so began with a base coat of Argonaut skin. This was then followed by a thinned wash of Hellion Red to give it a slightly reddish hue. I then tackled the flayed skin with a couple of highlights, first using some Ares flesh, followed by a few small dots of Ivory Tusk. In addition to using the Ivory Tusk as an extreme highlight, I also decided to use it as a base coat for the exposed skin of the kill team as well. As the heads I'd chosen were quite normal looking for Chaos Marines, I opted to give them more of a corrupted skin tone by applying a wash of Magi Purple. Once I'd achieved a purple hue over the skin, I then highlighted the facial features using some more Ivory Tusk. Next up were the metallics, and to start off, I painted all of the steel details using some Surcoat Silver. This was followed up with a wash of Oblivion Black, and then some Mithril Blade, which I applied as a highlight. Continuing with the metallics, the golden details were given a base coat of Spartan Bronze, which I followed with a wash of Battle Mud. And finally, some edge highlights of glistening gold to help those details stand out even further. For the glass bottles strapped to the waist, the cooling vents of the plasma gun, as well as the lenses and gems, I opted for the dark green of Hydra Green. Over this base coat, I painted on some edge highlights of Jade Green, and then finally a few small dots of Ghoul Green. Next, I focused on just the Butcher operative and his chunks of meat. These were both painted with Sanguine Scarlet, washed with Battle Mud, and then edge highlighted with some thin lines of Demon Red. From one set of dead animal bits to another, my next base coat focused on the various bones and skulls dotted across the kill team, and for this I used some sandstone. The recesses of these details were then darkened down with some Battle Mud, before I finished off with an edge highlight of Vampire Fang. With the bones painted, I then turned my attention to the leather pouches, gloves and straps using some Ancient Forest. These were also washed with Battle Mud, but were highlighted with some Wasteland Brown to bring out the edge details. At this point, my white scars were lacking the red in their iconic red and white colour scheme. However, these were Slaanesh corrupted white scars, so I instead opted to use the magenta of Sword Hilt Burgundy instead. This was used in 2 stages. The first saw me using it as a regular base coat across the plumes, left shoulder trim, and a few of the smaller details. The second stage was to paint on those jagged geometric shapes that are often employed by the white scars. I found that the simplest way to apply these was to use dots to first mark out the corners of the pattern before painting in the lines between these. Finally, the outlines could be filled in, completing the patterns. From here, the plumes and shoulder pads were washed with some more Magi Purple, and I finished off the magenta areas with a thin edge highlight of Glistening Gums, completing the painting. With everything painted, I carefully cleaned up the contact points between my power packs and torsos before gluing them together. With everything assembled, I then broke out the airbrush once again to apply a layer of matte varnish across the whole team. This helped to tone down some of the glossiness and ensured that my paintwork was protected. For the base, I kept things quite simple and used a few products from the Siege Scenics range. After coating the bases with some PVA, they were first dipped in some Mangala Plateau basing mix to give them the appearance of an iron oxide rich soil. Then, after allowing them to fully dry, they were topped with a few grass tufts and moss pads. And with that, I was left with this. And here we have my completed Slaanesh corrupted white scars from the Dornian Heresy. Now, while I could have just tackled a single miniature or character for this exploration of an alternate timeline, I think that building a full team offers far more opportunities. You can only add so much detail to a model, so spreading this over 6 miniatures allowed me to build something inspired by Stormcaller whilst also being able to build a guy with a huge chainsword and half a dally counter hanging from his belt. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with the kill team, and I think that at a glance it still reads as being a group of white scars, but upon closer inspection you can see those more corrupted elements seeping through. Now, as always, if you'd like to recreate any conversions from this video, I will include the links to all the kits and paints used in this video down in the description below, including where you can pick up my Dead Animal Bits kit. As such, if you have any ideas or suggestions for which Dornian or other alternate heresy kill team I could tackle next time, then leave them down in the comments below. But before I go, let me just say a huge thank you to everyone who continues to help keep this channel going. And if you'd like to support me too, you can get early access to ad-free videos, exclusive merchandise, and even your name in the credits. Simply follow my Patreon link below or hit the join button. Just like my top Patreon supporters did, who are Nail5, Axel Jonsson, Ban Yevrian, Berserker, Daniel Dowling, George Kanzini Roberts, Immaterial Creations, Cornbread, Maciej Savitsky, Matt Brower, Molly Mork, Mr. Grimm, Nima, Older Than Time, Ryan Little, Sam Sepulveda, Swedsman, Tim, and War Novice. And my top channel members, who are Alex Verne, Dave, Doug H, Guy Bazant, Kutch Kato, Lee Ely, Mark Taylor, Nernington Paints, Omni Tom, Philip Poya, S.O., Satoran, That One Tech Priest, the City of Cryas, the Sire Acquired, and Whale Tussler. So until next time, thanks for watching, and goodbye.